العلم أشراف مطلوب وطالبه لله أكرام من يمشي على قدم. العلم نور مبين يستضيء به أهل السعادات والجهال في الظلم.
Then he says rahimahullah وتعجيلها أفضل, and also to pray at its earliest time, at its earlier time is best. So the Prophet ﷺ mentioned, or Aisha radiallahu anha, she mentions, كُنَّ النِّسَاءُ الْمُؤْمِنَاتِ يَشْهَدْنَ مَعَ رَسُولِ اللَّهِ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وسلم صلاة الفجر. The female companions would pray the salah with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam with their hijab and so on and so forth, up until when they would go away, لا يعرفن أو لا يعرفهن أحد من الغلس, and no one would be able to, when they're going back, no one would be able to recognize them because of how dark it was. So that shows, if it is dark when they finish the salah, it shows that the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam completed the salah while it was still dark. Because when the female companions, when they're going home or when they're going back, they would not, no one would be able to recognize them because it would still be what? It would still be dark. طبعا, that is the opposite to a lot of Hanafi masjids that you pray in, whereas when you come out, it's actually bright. It's almost full, the sun's almost fully out when you come out. طيب. Then the Shaykh says, rahimahullah, وَتُدْرَكُ الصَّلَاةُ بِتَكْبِيرَةِ الْإِحْرَامِ فِي وَقْتِهَا. Now he's going to go into the next mas'ala. So the first mas'ala he started off with is what? He said that salah, or the condition of salah, is, or one of the conditions of salah is the entering of the time. Then he went on to say that from the entering of time, he mentioned every single salah, the beginning and the ending of each salah. Sah? The beginning and ending of each salah. Now he's going to mention, how do we know that a person has prayed at the correct time? How do we know a person has prayed at the correct time? He says, rahimahullah, طيب وتدرك الصلاة بتكبيرة الإحرام في وقتها. So you are able to reach the salah and you prayed the salah at its correct time بتكبيرة الإحرام. If you say the تكبيرة الإحرام في وقتها, in it, during its time, within its time. So let's say مثلا salah ends, or Salatul Dhuhr ends at 2, or let's say it ends at 3:50. Salatul Asr comes in what time? 3:50. So Dhuhr ends at 3:50. At 3:49, you say Allahu Akbar. That is called what? Takbiratul Ihram, sah? Like, what does this mean? Does it mean you've reached the time of the salah, or you prayed after the time of the salah? You've reached the time of the salah. Limada, why? Because you've made Takbiratul Ihram within the time of the salah. Is that understood? You prayed the time of salah within, you've made one takbirah. You've made one takbirah. So they say, the dalil is the hadith where the Prophet ﷺ said, إِذَا أَدْرَكَ أَحْدُكُمْ سَجْدَةً مِّن صَلَاةِ الْعَصْرِ قَبْلَ أَن تَغْرُبَ الشَّمْسِ. Whoever meets or performs one sajda, one sujood before the time of Asr, before the sun sets, فَلْيُتِمَّ صَلَاتُهُ, let him complete his salah. So they say sajda, the reason why the Prophet ﷺ sajda, he's referring to a condition, a pillar, meaning he meets one pillar. And takbirat al-ihram, is it not a pillar from the salah? No. So anyone who says that takbirat al-ihram has prayed the salah at its correct time. So you start your salah at 3:49. Allahu Akbar. Your first rak'ah, you may complete it what? Well after, مثلا 3:52, 3:53, صح? طيب. So your first rak'ah is in reality in what time? The time of Asr or the time of Dhuhr? The time of Asr. Like you started your time what? The time of Dhuhr. Is that understood? So the Shaykh is saying, well, who can give me an example of what the Shaykh is saying in terms of when you pray the time of Salah at its correct time? Use for any Salah, there's 5 Salahs. The end of Salat al-Maghrib. Okay, so the end of Salat al-Maghrib is at 7:50. You make takbirat al-ihram at 7:49, literally 1 minute before it ends. Then you've prayed Maghrib at its time. So you'll be sinful and blameworthy and so on. Like you've prayed the Salah at its correct time. Simply by what? By meeting the takbirat al-ihram. By praying the takbirat al-ihram fi waqtiha. طيب. And there's a second opinion which is important to write down. And the second opinion is that the Salah or the time of the Salah is not met except by, or the time that it takes to pray a minimum of 1 rak'ah. The time that it takes to pray a minimum of 1 rak'ah. And the hadith, or the Prophet ﷺ said, "Man adraka min al-asri rak'atan qabla an taghrib ash-shamsu faqad adraka." Whoever performs a rak'ah within the time of salah, then verily he has prayed the salah at its time. He has prayed the salah, Salat al-Asr at its correct time, and that goes for every other salah. Obviously, even the ones that say takbirat al-ihram, they say what is meant by rak'ah is a rukn. A rukn is what is intended. So what they differ over is the understanding of the hadith and the other hadith to do with the sajda. Like in a lot of the ulama, they say that is the stronger opinion. As long as there's enough time for you to pray salah, 1 rak'ah, minimum of 1 rak'ah, then you have what? Then your time of you have met the time of the salah. Even if there's 3 other rak'at are outside of the time of salah. Mathalan, the example that Ja'far mentioned, 7:50, the time ends. 7:50 is the time that Maghrib ends. If a person starts his takbirat al-ihram at 7:45, 5 minutes is enough to pray what? 1 rak'ah. Therefore, they say Allahu Akbar at 7:45, and then they complete their first rak'ah by 7:47, or 7:50, or 7:49. Then, because they prayed their first rak'ah within the time of the salah, even if their second rak'ah and their third rak'ah, if it is outside of the time of the salah, then their salah is still what? Valid. Their salah is still valid. طيب. And we're going to see the benefit of this mas'ala. Questions after, inshallah. We're going to see the benefit of this mas'ala in a few minutes, a few lines down. Right. So how does the salah, according to the Shaykh rahimahullah, how do we make sure we pray the salah at its correct time, at the minimum? Takbirat al-ihram. طيب. Keep that in mind. Then the Shaykh says rahimahullah, وَلَا يُصَلِّي قَبْلَ غَلَبَةِ ظَنِّهِ بِدُخُولِ وَقْتِهَا. And he does not pray up until he's almost certain that the time of salah has entered. إِمَّا بِاجْتِهَادٍ, either by doing his own ijtihad. How? For example, مثلا, he sees the timing of the Asr is about to end, or the timing of Maghrib has entered and the sun has set. Or مثلا, he says he's got a clock, he's got the time, or he's got a watch on him, and he says 3-4 days ago Maghrib started at what? Let's say Maghrib started at 7:20, and now it is what? 7:13, 7:14. So obviously Salat al-Maghrib, more often than not, it goes back by about 2 minutes. So he says now, khalas, if it was 7:22 3 days ago, now it's going to be what? If you count it as 2 days, 2 minutes afwan, it would be about what? 18 minutes past, 16 minutes past. So he says, khalas, now the time of salah has entered. بِاجْتِهَادٍ مِّنْهُ. طيب. أو خبر ثقة متيقن. Or listening to, asking a person who is a thiqa, a person who is reliable, lakin he is mutayaqqin, he is sure. This has a mafhum. it has something that we understand from it. You understand from it that he's saying la, if he's a person who is not sure himself, khalas, don't take that into consideration. Why? Because you can do your own ijtihad. If he's not sure and you're not sure, khalas, why do you have to do taqleed of him? Is that understood? Lakin, in reality, if he's able to, if he's making his own ijtihad and he has more of an opinion than you, and you say Allahu A'lam, and he says la, it's at 7:30, you say Allahu A'lam what time it is. Like he says I'm sure, then you take his opinion for it. Then the Shaykh says rahimahullah, فَإِنْ أَحْرَمَ بِاجْتِهَادٍ, فَإِنْ أَحْرَمَ ماذا? Puts the ihram on. If he does takbirat al-ihram بِاجْتِهَادٍ, with ijtihad, meaning he's not 100% sure, like he does it out of his own ijtihad. Meaning looking, saying, I believe the sun has set. And obviously that is permissible. And a lot of our ibadah is based on ghalabatul dhan. For example, the companions of the Prophet ﷺ, on one of the occasions, a hadith of Asma saying that they thought the sun had set and it was the time of Maghrib. Therefore they had their iftar. Then a few minutes later the sun appeared. Mahallu shahid, the point of evidence is what? That they based their opinion of the sun going down based on what they thought. Sah? They did not say we're going to wait an extra half an hour or 20 minutes just to be sure. So the Shaykh says, فَإِنْ أَحْرَمَ بِاجْتِهَادٍ, and if he says the takbirat al-ihram with ijtihad, فَبَانَ قَبْلَهُ. Who can explain this? فَبَانَ قَبْلَهُ فَنَفْلٌ. The fuqaha, they use minimum amount of words with a great meaning. فَبَانَ قَبْلَهُ فَنَفْلٌ وَإِلَّا فَفَقْدٌ. مثلا,
would it be that if he does it by ijtihad and it turns out to be before, then it's enough of that?
Ahsant. So let's say, مثلا, for example, he says that Salatul Dhuhr to the Asr comes in, مثلا, Salatul Maghrib comes in at 7:30. That is the correct time. Obviously, he doesn't know. So he says, Salatul Asr, I'm sure Maghrib comes in at 7:15. Sometimes what can happen is when you're looking at the calendar, you look at the wrong Salah. So you try to look at Asr and you look at Fajr. Or you try to look at Fajr and you look at Asr. So it can happen. Huh? The wrong day. Or you can look at the wrong day. So let's say, mathalan, you looked and today was what? Saturday. And then you accidentally look at the time of Salah. Not last week, because then you still pray. Like in the next week, for example. What's the date today? 21st. So you look at the 28th. So the 28th Salah, it comes in later. Especially if you're in the what season, if the time is going longer and longer, if the days get longer. So you realize that you prayed the Salah 20 minutes before its time. Or 10 minutes before its time. 10 minutes a bit more realistic. 10 minutes before its time. And then khalas, you've finished your Salah. And then you astaghfirullah, subhanallah, walhamdulillah. And then all of a sudden you hear the adhan on your phone out of the blue. Or you hear someone else's adhan. So you prayed with ijtihad, like in what has come to light? That you prayed qablahu. Fabana qablahu. So it comes to light that you prayed before its correct time. What should you do? فَنَفْلٌ. أي هي نفل. Your previous salah that you prayed becomes a sunnah. Surah Al-Masal understood, صح? وَإِلَّا, and if not what? If you did not pray before its time, for fardun, then it is the correct time. Right. We can take 4 examples from this, or 4 scenarios, 4 possibilities rather. The first possibility is that you pray before its time. You pray with ijtihad, and you realize that you prayed before its time. What should you do? You repeat the prayer. And it's enough. Like, what should you do now with regards to the Maghrib? Let's deal with Maghrib. You do your ijtihad, and then 10 minutes later, you pray 10 minutes later, you realize that the time of Salah has not even entered. What do you do? Your first one was a nafil, and now you pray Maghrib. The second possibility is that you find out that you prayed at the correct time. What should you do? Nothing, because you prayed at the correct time. Or you find out third possibility is you find out you prayed after the correct time. What should you do then? After the correct time. The time of the next salah has already come in. Nothing's done. لا خلي النية, it doesn't matter. أهم شيء you prayed it. لأن the niyyah doesn't change it from the beginning. طيب. The next possibility is that you don't what? You don't know. خلاص, if you don't know and you prayed with ijtihad, then your salah is sound. You don't need to what? Repeat it. Is that understood? This next mas'ala, concentrate inshallah. He says, وَإِنْ أَدْرَكَ, he's going to mention two masail that are the complete opposite to one another. وَإِنْ أَدْرَكَ مُكَلَّفٌ, and if the mukallaf مِنْ وَقْتِهَا قَدْرَ التَّحْرِيمَ, if he meets the salah, if he's able to do the amount or the possible amount that it takes to do the takbirat al-ihram. So there's enough time for him to say Allahu Akbar. Is that understood? There's enough time for him to say Allahu Akbar. ثُمَّ زَالَ تَكْلِيفُهُ, and then the obligation of the salah finishes. He's no longer a mukallaf at that particular time. So let's say Salatul Dhuhr starts at what time? Let's say it starts at 12 o'clock. 12:01 at 11:50, 11:55, 11:56, 11:59, 12 o'clock, he's a mukallaf. مثلا, a woman is not on her hayd. She prayed Fajr and she's still on her, she's tahir. Then time for Salatul Dhuhr comes in at 12 o'clock. Then at 12:01, so when 12 o'clock comes in and Salatul Dhuhr comes in, is she a mukallafa, yes or no? Mukallafa. At 12:01, her hayd starts. Is that understood? That is the surah al-mas'ala that the Shaykh rahimahullah is now explaining. Her hayd starts. ثُمَّ زَالَ التَّكْلِيف. So she's no longer what? Mukallafa at that particular time to pray what? To pray the salah. أو حاضت, or she has hayd. So either a person goes majnoon, goes crazy, insane afwan, or حاضت, or she has her hayd. ثُمَّ كُلِّفَ, and then the taklif comes back after 6 or 7 or 8 days. وَطَهُرَتْ, and she completes her hayd. قَضَوْهَا, they repeat it. Why do they repeat it? Because at the time of the salah, did we not say a few lines ago, remember when I said to you, hold this mas'ala, did he not say that the time that it becomes wajib is when you've prayed the salah, there's a minimum of takbirat al-ihram. So when salah started at 12 o'clock, 12 p.m., and her hayd started at 12:01, 1 minute is enough time to do what? Takbirat al-ihram. Sah? So even if her hayd starts at 12:01, then what do? He says, according to the mu'allif rahimahullah, when she finishes her hayd in 6 or 7 days, she has to pray that salah. Why? They say لأنها كانت مخاطبة. She was among the mukallafeen that were addressed with that particular salah. There's another opinion of what? Rak'ah. Just like when we said earlier on the time of salah, when it's the ending, if a person has enough time to pray one rak'ah, then they have to make that salah, that prayer up. So for the woman who the salah was starting at 12 o'clock, she got her hayd at 12:01. Does she need to make it up at the end? No, why? Because that is not enough time to do what? One rak'ah. Is that understood? طيب. مثلا, someone goes into coma at 12:01. Then, in about 10 days, alhamdulillah, he's out of coma and he's fully conscious. What does he need to do? On the madhab, the first opinion, he repeats it. He went into coma at 12:01. On the second opinion, does he need to repeat it? No, he does not need to repeat it. Why? Because from 12 o'clock to 12:01, it is not enough time to do what? Nah. So that is one mas'ala. So at the beginning of that, وَإِنْ أَدْرَكَ مُكَلَّفٌ, write meme 1. Meme 1. So that you know. Mas'ala, al-mas'alatul ula, the first mas'ala. طيب, just to go back onto that mas'ala, would you think that she has to, let's say for example her haid comes in at 12:30 or 12:15, does she need to make it up? Put what we've studied to one side. Would you think she needs to make it up? لماذا? Why? Muhammad, لماذا? She had enough time to pray.
No, because she still, it wasn't as if she was delaying out of ignorance, it was more so
She didn't.
like the haid came earlier and she still had enough time to still pray.
She still had enough time to pray. طيب? She still had enough time to pray. This actually goes back to a mas'ala usuliyah, which is, when you're studying wajib, inshallah, next book when we study, we're going to see wajib from one category, in terms of categorizing it bi'tibar, it is divided into wajib muwassa', wajib mudayyaq. A wajib that is muwassa', the time is wasi', and a wajib that is mudayyaq. Wajib that is muwassa' is the wajib that you can perform the ibadah itself and other acts of the same ibadah. For example, dhuhr starts at 12 and it ends at 3 p.m. Between 12 and 3 you can pray dhuhr, sah? Can you not also pray a lot of nawafil? You can pray tahiyatul masjid, sunnah mutlaqa, sunnatul wudu. There's many other types, sah? That is called wajib muwassa'. That wajib is vast. The time of that wajib is wasi', spacious. Is that understood? Wajib mudayyaq, the wajib that has been limited, an example of this is fasting. We fast, mathalan, let's say, the day, in one day. What do we start? When do we start our fast? Just before Fajr, sah? And when do we end it? Maghrib. What do we do? We're fasting during that time. Can we fast during that time as well? Why? Because we're already fasting. We can't perform the same ibadah as it. Is that understood? Right. So for this sister, the person here, who saw the haid, her haid came at 12:15 or even 12:30, it can be said that later on when her haid ends, she doesn't need to repeat anything. لأنها ما قصرت أصلا. She hasn't come with any shortcoming. Because she's delayed the salah up until a time, then she was allowed to delay it. And she was well within her time. So it was not wajib upon her, they say. So that is, it's a valid opinion actually. Like, obviously there's those that say, khalas, it was wajib once upon a time, therefore it is wajib upon her. Which one's the safer option? As we shall see. The next mas'ala is where it says, ظهرت قضاها ومن صار أهلا. Can you see the next? I think it's probably numbered in bullet points, sah? So the next bullet point, just put meme 2. And this is now the total opposite. This is now the total opposite. He says, وَمَنْ صَارَ أَهْلًا لِوُجُوبِهَا. Whoever becomes a person that it is wajib upon. قَبْلَ خُرُوجِ وَقْتِهَا. Before the time ends, before its correct time ends, لَزِمَتْهُ. طيب. Surah al-Mas'ala. Previously, the person, when it started, he was what? Mukallaf. You know the example of the 12 o'clock, the last mas'ala. When the time of salah started, that person was a mukallaf. They were expected to do ibadah, sah? And then something happened to them that took them out of taklif. Took them out of being burdened with the ibadah. For example, she was not on haid, and then half an hour later her haid came. This is the opposite. A person who was on her haid, or a kafir who accepted Islam, who was a kafir, and then he accepts Islam, or then her haid ends, before the ending of the salah. Mathalan 12 p.m. to 3 p.m. That is the time of dhuhr. Her haid ends at 2:40. That is where this mas'ala is. Sara ahlan laha. He becomes a person who it becomes binding upon. Is that understood? Or a kafir who becomes a Muslim, now it is binding upon him. Or a person reaches puberty. They have a nap at 12 o'clock and khalas, they see a wet dream, they have a wet dream. By the time they wake up, they are mukallaf. Is that understood? At the beginning of the time, they were not mukallafin. Now they are what? مكلفين. واضح صح؟ طيب. ومن صار أهل لوجوبه قبل خروج وقتها. لكن before the ending of the time, لزمته ماذا? That salah becomes wajib upon him. Who can give me an example? And 3 o'clock when it's just about to end. Like he took a nap. Before nap and after nap, it was wajib upon him. طيب, so it became wajib upon him. And a woman who started the salah, the time of the salah with her haid, and then her haid ended. The Shaykh is saying, rahimahullah, when her haid ends, she performs the salah. That is straightforward, صح? Lakin here's where the confusion is. وَمَا يُجْمَعُ إِلَيْهَا قَبْلَهَا. وَمَا يُجْمَعُ, and whatever salah it is normally combined with, قَبْلَهَا, that is before it. مثلا, what 2 prayers are combined normally when traveling? ظهر and Asr and Maghrib and Isha. طيب. If a woman's haid ends at the time of Asr, Asr ends at 6 p.m. Maghrib starts at 6 p.m. Asr ends at 6 p.m. Her haid ends at 5:30 p.m. She has her ghusl. She has to pray what? According to the first words of the mu'allif, she has to pray what? Asr. That's what he says, what? قَبْلَ خُرُوجِ وَقْتِهَا لَزِمَتُ. That's understood, صح? Lakin then he says, وَمَا يُجْمَعُ إِلَيْهَا قَبْلَهَا. And also whatever salah it is combined with, قَبْلَهَا, that comes before it. So according to him, now she needs to also make up what? Dhuhr. Is that understood? So there's things you need to understand here. The matan and the reason why it is said. So the matan says what? If she ends her haid at the time, or a person becomes conscious, or a person becomes a Muslim at the time of Asr, they not only need to pray Asr, but they need to also pray what? Dhuhr. Likewise, if a person at the end of Isha time, or at the time of Isha, the haid ends, or a person becomes a Muslim, or comes out of coma and becomes conscious, they need to now pray Maghrib and what? Isha. Is that understood? That is based on 2 evidences. First and foremost, it has been narrated from Abdullah ibn Abbas and Abdurrahman ibn Auf, radiyallahu anhuma. It has been narrated from Abdurrahman ibn Auf and Abdullah ibn Abbas, radiyallahu anhuma, that they commanded with this. So this was their madhab. And طبعا from the madhab of the Hanabila, as we studied in the madkhal, is qawl al-sahabi, or madhab al-sahabi, if there's no one that has khilaf of it in the mas'ala. However, some of the scholars say, or scholars of hadith, they say that these 2 narrations are not authentically traced back to Abdurrahman ibn Auf and Abdullah ibn Abbas. So there's khilaf on the authenticity of these 2 opinions. That's number 1. And the second reason they say this is because these 2 prayers are often combined at times of udhr, when there's a need and when a person has an excuse. For example, the mustahada, for example, the person that is traveling, for example, the person that is ill. They can combine these 2 prayers, صح? In times of exceptional circumstances. So they say likewise, this is an exceptional circumstance. طيب. So you've understood the mas'ala and the evidence and the ta'leel, the reasoning. واضح? طيب. What do you think? Do you agree or not? مبارك. Huh? لا, leave ترتيب. ترتيب's coming.
No, I'm just asking based on this whole, the woman required for Dhuhr and Asr, or pray Asr and then Dhuhr.
لا, that's to come. But is that they're going to pray Dhuhr first and then Asr. But that is to come.
Yeah.
Based on what you said before, she wasn't mukallaf at the time of Dhuhr, so there's no taklif on her. So why would you be obligated to do it?
Okay, so you're saying why would she need to pray? She wasn't a mukallaf at the time of Dhuhr, right?
Based Jason Ibn Alif is saying, though, he's saying that that's just something that necessitates them missing the salah. Now that they've come out of it, they would, the same way that a person that's sick would combine, the person that's now coming into Mukallaf also have to combine the same way.
So you agree with this?
Somewhat.
طيب محمد. You agree. طيب عبد الكريم. عفوا go تفضل عبد الكريم finish. Just has to pray that salah. طيب, sisters, what do you think? You have to have an opinion, concerns you more. You only pray Asr. Why? It was not wajib upon her before. طيب, that the only opinion from the sisters? Praise both. لماذا? Why? The safer option. Ahsant, good. طيب, what? Less safer because it's in terms of the fact that this is a madhab of the two companions. Not only that, like in these two prayers are combined in times of need. Ismail.
But I don't understand why it's a need. What's the need?
What's the need of what?
You said the ta'leel is that because it's a time of need that she... What's
The need is hayd. Hayd is a need. It's a necessity. مثلا, a person that accepts Islam is need as in exceptional circumstances.
How is it exceptional? Like her hayd finishing.
Udhr, isn't it? It's an illness, a type of illness, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a udhr. Her hayd finishing. How is it exceptional? Is that normal?
La, it's in terms of udhr. She had an udhr to not pray dhuhr.
Okay, yeah.
That udhr zala, that udhr is no longer there. Sah? Lakin during the second time, these two prayers would normally be combined. That's what they're saying. طبعا تستطيع you can do.
Like, in normal time, you wouldn't do, let's say for sickness.
If you're traveling, you would. If you're ill and you can't pray both, you would.
The hayd is not considered a sickness, it's a hukum wad'i, صح? You can't control it.
You can't control sickness.
You can't control it.
You can't control sickness either.
But as in it's something that's natural. It's not something that's muktasab.
Wallah, illness is not man-made as well, it's natural.
But salah's not wajib when you're hayd. Salah's wajib when you're sick.
طيب. I'll come back to you. طيب. In reality, he's got a strong point. And that is actually the qawl of the Hanafiya, Imam Abu Hanifa and Ibn Hazm. لماذا? Why? Not even on these ta'lilat. Lakin, the hadith of Aisha radiallahu anha, she says, كنا نؤمر بقضاء الصوم ولم نؤمر بقضاء الصلاة. طيب. For argument's sake, let's say that ta'lil is correct. Without even having ta'lil. Lakin, the time of dhuhr, her praying asr now, is that the time? طيب. Ta'lil now, her praying asr now, her praying dhuhr at the time of asr, is that ada or qada? Qada. No one has any difference on this. It is qada. You cannot call it ada because ada was if she prayed it during the time of dhuhr. Now it is called qada. طيب. The hadith of Aisha is clear in the sense that what it says, we weren't commanded to do what? Qada. So that min haythu dalil, that is stronger. In terms of dalil, that is stronger. Why are we going to now make it wajib upon her to pray the salah? That wasn't even wajib upon her at the time. Like, I'm talking about if we say that the opinions are not authentic. If they're not authentically traced back to the companions. Also, someone can do niqash and say, لا, قول الصحابة ليس بحجة. صح?
You also argue that this is the qawl of Ibn Abbas and Mas'ud when Aisha said, كنا نؤمر, which she's referring to.
No, you can also say that, or even further than that, you can say that these two aqwal يخالفون أو خالف الحديث. That can also be said, that they contradict the hadith. Because Aisha says, we weren't... Aslan, how did it come about, Aisha's words? A woman came to her and said, why is it that you repeat the salah, the sawm, but you don't repeat the what? The fasting. You repeat the fasting, but you don't repeat the salah. She said, Haruriyatun anti. Are you from the Khawarij?
Well, couldn't that be argued that within that hadith is kind of understood that she's talking about much, like, for example, the person's on Hayd for 7 days, they mean the sick, like, proper past days, not just...
Proper 6 days ago?
Like the proper 6 days
Kayf.
ago. So, for example...
صح, I understand what you're saying, but how, يعني, with what hujjah? What specifies it? Qada. Even now, trying to pray Asr now, but Dhuhr now, is Qada. Mubarak. The only reason I'm going into this is because it's something that concerns the sisters a lot. Meaning not having to do combine. Naam, sah. You can say that. Hassan. You can say that Hayd concerns her more in that sense.
It might seem far-fetched, but could you also argue that, let's say, for example, Aisha, she proposed this view that you don't do the salah for qada, but there was no specificity of the hadith for the Prophet to say that you pray two or just one afterwards.
يعني you're saying her ijtihad or the ijtihad of the Sahaba, the other two Sahaba. يعني نعم, it is the ijtihad. It would be the ijtihad. على كل حال, على كل حال. Ahsant, it can also be said that because it's something that would happen quite common frequently, if we don't have a dalil, you can say umum al-balwa, another takhrij. Umum al-balwa, due to the fact that it is something that is widespread and there's no evidence for it, then we wouldn't need to do it. Lakin, however, now that you've seen the khilaf, and that is quite a strong khilaf, al-ihtiyad is what? The safer option is that you pray. Number one, it's not something that happens all the time. It's not like every single month that the Hayd ends at the time of Asr or the time of Isha. It could end any of the other times. Also, you can call it khurujan min al-khilaf. And the ulama, they say, al-khuruj min al-khilaf mustahab. Just leaving the fold of khilaf is mustahab, is liked. Mathalan, those that say you have to make it up, they say if you don't make it up, you're what? Sinning. Those that say you don't have to make it up, if you do make it up, they won't say, khalas, you were sinning for praying that salah. They won't say that to you, sah? So, khurujan min al-khilaf, that is the safer option. Min haythu dalil, from the angle of evidence, wallahu a'lam, the opinion that says you don't have to make it up is stronger. Min haythu al-ihtiyad, lakin to be on the safer option, then it is what? And these masail are khilafiyya, lakin the safer option is better. طيب ويجب فورا قضاء الفوائد. ويجب, and it is wajib فورا, to immediately make up the قضاء الفوائد. Those prayers that have what? That have been missed, that you're making up. Also, this goes back to masala in usul al-fiqh, which is what? Al-amr yaqtadi al-fawriyya, immediately. The amr necessitates that you carry out immediately, which is the madhab of the Hanabila. And the opposite to that is the madhab of ويجب فورا قضاء الفوائد. طيب. So مثلا, as soon as the person remembers, then they what? Then they make it up. The Messenger ﷺ said, من نسي الصلاة, whoever forgets a salah, فليصليها, let him make it up, let him pray. فتعقيب, يعني immediately after, إذا ذكرها, أي حين ذكرها. So in this hadith, there are two places that we can take fawriya from, that we have to do immediately. فليصليها, let him pray it. إذا ذكرها, when he remembers. So both evidences are, or both of these times are found in the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. لا كفارة إلا ذلك. طيب. So we have to make up فورا, immediately. مرتبا, and we have to make up in order. مثلا, a person sleeps at the time of dhuhr, just before dhuhr, and they wake up at the time of Isha. What do? We first establish that they need to pray the salah, صح? Lakin they also have to what? Do tartib. Dhuhr first, then Asr, then Maghrib, then Isha. That is the asl. Questions after Muhammad. Let me just finish this bab of salah. Time. This condition. So they have to make up what? Qada. And they have to make it up in order. طيب ويسقط ترتيب بالنسيانه لكن there's an exemption. When is the exception? If you forget which salah you initially missed. Or for example you pray Asr first and then you remember, hold on, I didn't pray Dhuhr as well. You've forgotten, then you're excused. طيب, first and before that, before we move on, why do you have to do it murattaban, in order? Write a قاعدة down, قاعدة فقهية. And the قاعدة is القضاء يحكي الأداء. القضاء يحكي الأداء. Al-Qada'u, when you're making up the salah, in reality it is as if you are praying it at its time. The Qada is in place of the Ada. Both are rough or loose translations. Meaning whatever you would need to do for Ada, you need to do now for Qada. So Dhuhr was how many rak'at? 4. Now you need to pray 4. Another example of this qa'idah. You forget to pray Salat al-Isha last night, مثلا. You remember now, it's daytime, sah? You remember to pray Salat al-Isha. You remember you haven't prayed Salat al-Isha, so you need to now pray what? Salat al-Isha. It is daytime, sah? When you're praying Isha now, how are you going to pray? Are you going to recite the 2 rak'at, the 2 first rak'at, are you going to recite out loud or? Out loud or not? ليش? Why? Now, by this qa'idah you say al-qada yahki al-ada. So you use this qa'idah, you say I'm going to make it up. Like some of the fuqaha, they say like, if you're praying in the daytime, you read quietly. Because the prayers of the daytime are read quietly and the prayers of the nighttime are read out what? Loud. So even if it is a prayer that normally you would read out loud, if you make it up during the time of the salah, or during the daytime, then you need to what? Read it quietly, even if it's Maghrib, Fajr, Isha, because it is daytime that you remembered. Lakin, if we say al-qada'u yahki al-ada', then you won't. No. He says, وَيَسْخُضُ التَّرْتِيب. Lakin, if you forget, then the tartib, or the order, drops. وَبِخَشْيَةِ خُرُوجِ وَقْتِ اخْتِيَارِ الْحَاضِرَةِ. And also it drops, the tartib, if you're worried that the time of the time of the salah in which you are currently in is about to end. So let's say, for example, let's say, مثلا, salat, you forgot to pray dhuhr earlier on. And then you remember that you haven't prayed asr. And there's literally 7 minutes or 6 minutes until asr ends, and then it's time for maghrib. You need to pray how many salahs? Maghrib hasn't come in yet. Dhuhr and asr. Until maghrib, you've only got 6 or 7 minutes. Which salah should you start with? Asr. Limada? Because it is about to end. Because dhuhr, there's nothing new. Asr, you missed dhuhr anyway. It would have always been qada. Lakin rather than having 2 prayers to make up, it is better to have 1 prayer to what? To make up. طيب. Then the Shaykh says, rahimahullah, وَمِنْهُ سَطْرُ الْعَوْرَةِ. نعم. So سَطْرُ الْعَوْرَةِ is obviously a long condition. Lakin we won't have time. على أي حال, we'll stop there. I wanted to finish the other 2 more. Satr al-awra and najasat. Lakin the time, Allahu A'lam, where it goes. I know where we went. You guys took 20 minutes of my time in the beginning. So we're going to continue. وَمِنْهَا سَطْرُ الْعَوْرَةِ. And from it, satr al-awra, the covering of the awra. Satr al-awra, to cover the awra. Like, in terms of evidence, or the word in satr al-awra, you won't find it as specific evidence. Lakin, Ya bani Adam khudhu zinatakum inda kulli masjid. Oh bani Adam, take your beauty at the end of at the time of every salah. Zinat inda kulli masjidin. Inda kulli salatin. I think it would be too much to take now, so khalas. It's wishful thinking. We'll stop there, inshallah. If there are any questions, we can finish early. لحظة I'm going to go through the questions of the sisters first. Naam. Yeah. Sorry, say that again. If the woman that has her haid has entered, she was a Muslim, sah? So why would he need to repeat it, the kafir, yani? Or why would the kafir need to repeat it? Why would she need to repeat it? طيب. Lakin, what do they have in common? Adam taklif. None of them were mukallaf at the time. The woman, the salah was not wajib upon her. She wasn't a mukallaf at the time, sah? The kafir, he wasn't a mukallaf at the time, or she wasn't a mukallaf at the time. So the woman on haid, it wouldn't have been accepted from her anyway. It would not have been accepted from her if she would have prayed. Just like the man. So where's the khilaf in that? Yani, where's the issue in that? Are you saying the fact that it wasn't wajib upon him, why does he need to make it up? But that's the same for the woman. It wasn't wajib upon her, but she needs to make it up. Just like the woman, she wasn't mukallafa with that.
So then you can say then Ramadan has to pay you back in that case because it was wajib on him during
La. If he accepted Islam at 6 p.m., half an hour before iftar, yes, he would need to make up that day. The same for Asr, because they're saying the time of Dhuhr and Asr is one in this scenario. Huh? Al-Islam yajub ma qabla ma fi. There's no ta'arud. The qada that he's been told to make is not because of the time of the salah, him not praying and so on and so forth. They're saying he's within the time of salah now. He's within the time of Asr and within the time of Dhuhr. Because Dhuhr is the time of Asr. If a woman goes continue breaks fast, whatever, Ramadan fast, no fast. The first question, or the question that relates to the book. If a woman continuously breaks her fast, whether Ramadan fast or Nawafil fasts, does she have to give fidyah? If she breaks her Nawafil fast, then obviously she's not blameworthy. It's better for her to carry like she's not blameworthy. Like if for Ramadan fast, that's haram. That is haram for her to do so, and there's no fidyah. In an area where the only person who's memorized the Quran can be Imam, isn't baligh, the Imam is baligh, is the Salah of the Jama'ah accepted as a fard Salah or a nafil Salah, since the Salah of the non-obligatory is accepted as... La, shuf, there's a hadith, Amr ibn Salama, radiallahu anhu, where he was 6 years old, he would lead the Sahaba in Salah. So obviously he was mature, tamyiz, lakin he wasn't a mukallaf. So for him, obviously salah has been accepted, lakin for them it was their wajib salah.
In regards to the end in terms of Asr Salah, if a person lives in an area where the closest masjid to him is Masjid Ahnaf, where they pray in the second time, is it more often for the person to pray on his own to meet the time of up until 2 times the shade, or would it be more often for the person to attend the Jama'ah past the 2 times shade?
Wallah, Allahu a'lam. We'll see, inshallah. if you pray salah with your own ijtihad, doesn't that contradict the first condition of the time of al-waqt, because you were uncertain about the time, i.e. certainty of the... it doesn't contradict the time, because the way that you establish the salah can be yaqeen, obviously, which is better. And if you don't know yaqeen, if you don't have yaqeen, then you do ijtihad. Just like you would do the same for the qibla. Ismail, your question? So you're saying that in the madhab, for the qawl of the sahabi to be taken into consideration, that it does not contradict, or the companions don't contradict one another in this. طيب. However, in this particular mas'ala, there is no contradiction they're saying. Why? Because Aisha radiallahu anha is talking about qada in general, and this specific mas'ala is khas to this specific situation and this specific scenario. So the way that that khilaf would come into place if Aisha radiallahu anha was to be asked, if she was asked, does a woman need to pray asr? Does she need to pray dhuhr if her haid ends at the time of asr? And then she says no. That's when the khilaf will come into it. Can we please have the fan, AC on? Yeah, it'd be good, but for some reason, I don't know, it's not on, it's not working. There's a small minor one here, but it's extremely hot. Don't worry, we're suffering as well. What is the ruling of a woman? What is the ruling if a woman starts her period during the night and she doesn't know if she began before the start of Fajr time, before the time of Fajr? The only way this would be possible is if she wakes up after Fajr. The only time this would be possible is if she wakes up after Fajr. Because if she wakes up during the time of Fajr, then she would know at the time of Fajr if she was on hayd or not. So the only way this question can come into play is if she wakes up after Fajr and she wakes up on hayd. She wakes up on hayd. Then she wouldn't know exactly what time her hayd started. Is that understood? That's the Surah al-Mas'ala. So this question, the only way it can come into place or come into question is if the woman goes to sleep not on hayd and then she wakes up on hayd. Allahu A'lam, that probably happens. Lakin, when they wake up after Fajr, if it is the time of Fajr, khalas, she'll know if she's on hayd or not. The only problem is if she wakes up after the time of Fajr and then she sees her hayd. So the yaqeen is that she was on hayd when she woke up, meaning she wouldn't need to make it up. Allahu A'lam.
So you know the aqwal of Abdillah bin Abbas and Rahman bin Auf? What's the illah for them saying that you should, if you become, if you woman...
Naam. What's the illah? What is the reason? The fact that the time of Asr is also the time of Dhuhr during times of need, travel and so on.
Just because it's possible for it to be joined, and that's the reason.
Because not because it is only that, like it is that. These two prayers are combined in traveling and other times. And Isha and Maghrib and Isha exactly the same when a person is traveling. Muzdalifah and so on, or when the person is ill. Alexa. Life.
Two questions.
Fadal.
That is by saying that the state of the salah gives precedence over the time of the salah. So are we able to do qiyas based off that? Like, أنت وقت الظهر في الظهر والعصر, and I can pray. I'm walking in the park on my way to work, and my work has a prayer room, and because the park is surrounded by people, dogs, so make me affect my khushu'. According to that qaida, is it permissible for me to delay until I get to work and pray in a...
لا شك في ذلك, definitely. Because so the question is, if I am able to pray in a location where I am not going to get a lot of khushu', and I can also pray in a few minutes time, 10 minutes, 15 minutes time, in a location that I am going to have khushu', is it permissible for me to delay the salah? Sahih, na'am, ya Allah.
The second one is a hadith of Prophet when he found one of the Sahabas being very sleepy during their prayer. He said, so he ordered them to sleep in أحدكم لا يدري ما يقول. And فأمره بالنوم إن أحدكم لا يدري ما يقول. And so, for example, let's say somebody just came back from a flight. He stands there, meets him anywhere, and it's 30 minutes left for Fajr, but he feels extremely sleepy. But if he knows that if he sleeps, he's going to wait after the time of Fajr, which is probably after Shuruk, like 9 or 10. Does he wait, or is it best for him to take as a hadith and sleep and then pray Fajr later, inshallah?
So the hadith that you're referring to, I believe it was from Qiyamul Layl. It was from Qiyamul Layl, I believe. طيب. So the question is basically, if a person has about half an hour or an hour left up until the time of Salah enters, and they are extremely tired, what should they do? Should they pray now, meaning before the time of the Salah, or should they delay the Salah until after they wake up? Isn't there a third possibility, which is they wake up, they remain awake, or they set the alarm clock for the correct time? That is what they do. They either stay awake for the time to enter and then pray, even if it means they miss the jama'ah. Or they sleep, set the alarm clock and ask those around them to wake them up at the time of the salah. That is what they should do. Then if it so happens that they oversleep, then obviously they need to make, the hadith applies, مَنْ نَسِيَ الصَّلَاةَ وَمَنْ نَامَ عَنْ صَلَاةُ نَسِيَ فَلْيُصَلِّهِ إِذَا ذَكَرَهَا. Let him pray when he remembers it. Like one thing is for certain, that person cannot pray the salah before its correct time. And that's where the khilaf comes in. دخول الوقت and al-waqt. Remember, that is where the khilaf is. So دخول الوقت is a condition, rather the most important condition from the conditions of the salah. Because you can pray salah without even having wudu. You can make tayammum, as long as it's within the time. Or, even in terms of without covering your awrah, and the time of salah is ending, then you still need to pray the salah. And that condition is coming. You still need to pray the salah. So the condition of the salah is the most important condition for the salah. In that sort of situation, you apply the hadith for the Prophet ﷺ. صَلِّ قَائِمًا فَإِن لَمْ تَسْتَطِعْ فَقَائِمًا فَإِن لَمْ تَسْتَطِعْ فَعَلَى جَنْبٍ. So you pray whatever situation that you're able to pray. So, if you're able to stand, but you're not able to do ruku' and sujood, then you stand, so you don't miss that pillar of standing, because it is something that you are able to do. Then when it's the time for ruku' and sujood, if you're not able to fulfill that pillar, then you obviously do the next option that you've been commanded, which is to do it sitting down. Naam, Muhammad. When you're in the air, you follow the time of the outside. You look outside the window. If it is, as when you can see that the time of Fajr is appearing, then that is when you then that is when you pray Fajr. Because you can't look at any one country, because you're going on top of about 10 different countries within the space of 2 hours. If a woman is experiencing constant discharge and can she delay the Asr for the later time, waqt al-iddirar, delay just before Maghrib so she can pray the prayers close together? La, she shouldn't delay the salahs so that she can combine the salahs. Why? Because in this sort of situation she takes the ruling of the mustahada, and the mustahada, what she does is she makes wudu for every salah. She makes wudu for every salah and she prays her salah. So even if it's in this situation, even if she delays Asr, she still needs to make wudu and pray Asr. Then if the time of Asr comes in, the time of Maghrib comes in and the discharge is still coming out, she would still need to make wudu for Maghrib as well. So she takes the same ruling as mustahada.
Or even, for instance, we find people that pray the Sunnah of Fajr when it's Salah started, because there's a narration from the Mas'ud that found that even though Allah said hadith about the opening of Salah. So in this case, if I see someone doing this, in back of my mind, should I advise them, even though I know they have there's a wedge for what they do? What should your mindset be in such cases?
The two masail that every masail is in the individual case, has to be looked at as an individual case. The masala that you mentioned, أصفر بالفجر, or كما قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. So that mas'ala, the ulama, the jumhur, they say that is mansukh. لأن in that same hadith, it mentions that the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم did not do that again. And he would always pray at the earlier time. So that khilaf, although it is a khilaf, lakin, according to the jumhur of the ulama, that it is the time, or the correct time is to pray the Fajr time earlier and not Isfirar. However, that khilaf is khilaf that is, you can understand, it's acceptable. So in that sort of situation, if you've got mathalan a person who, there's a masjid that pray according to the Hanafi time and a masjid that pray according to the Jumhur time, and there's a person that you want to advise, take that person with you to the other masjid. You say, let's go pray in this masjid and let's not go pray in that masjid. That's one mas'ala. However, the second mas'ala that you mentioned, the khilaf in that is da'if. لماذا? Why is it da'if? لأنه from the condition of a qawl al-sahabi is that he doesn't contradict, that it doesn't contradict the opinion, the hadith. So the hadith of Abdillah ibn Mas'ud radiyallahu anhu, if it is authentically narrated from Abdillah ibn Mas'ud radiyallahu anhu, where he prayed Fajr, the Sunnah of Fajr, while the Jama'ah is going on, then that is a weak khilaf. Because we have the Prophet ﷺ saying, إِذَا أُقِيمَتِ الصَّلَاةِ فَلَا صَلَاةَ إِلَّا الْمَكْتُوبَةِ. If the iqamah has been called, there is no prayer except the maktuba, except the one that is wajib. So there you would say that is a qawl al-sahabi khalafa, that has contradicted the clear sunnah. So that khilaf is slightly weaker. So that sort of person, you advise them. Allahu a'lam. Naam, Maghrib, sah? نعم في المغرب والله تعالى أعلم وأحكم وبالله التوفيق وقل رب زدني